panel of today's school search event. My name is Fiona Mackenzie. I'm Head of Education at Carfax Education. And the topic that we're going to be covering now is how schools prepare their pupils and students for university entry. And I'm delighted to be joined by a panel with a wide array of experience. We have Alex Rodgalvis, who's the career counsellor at Arcadia School. We're joined by Robert Ellis. I do beg your pardon. We're joined by Nick Rickford, who's the principal of Sunmark School. Try that one again. And we're joined by Alex Harrison, who is head of IB Strategy and Partnerships at GEMS Wellington International School. So thank you all very much indeed for joining me today. Now, I think this is such a kind of huge topic because so many schools, so many parents judge schools on kind of university destination data. You know, of all the kind of metrics that they use, this seems to be one that they're like, so where do you all send your children, after this? And so I think out here this has a real sort of currency. So I think one of the questions that parents always want to understand is, how do you prepare these children to make these what are increasingly competitive applications? So there must be a bit of pressure on you guys in the school to kind of deliver on this. We already had a very interesting session earlier on, which you might want to clock on preparing how you prepare your students for the future. But this is really specifically now about university entry. So, Alex, in terms of the kind of academics, how does Arcadia go about that? Because that's a key part of this, isn't it?
Yeah, so on the academic side of things, it's important that students understand really sort of from year 9 on upwards about what they would like their destination to be, and the GCSE is very much at the first hurdle that students can trip up at. So for some students, they have a very clear idea of their destination, such as psychology. They may not realize that a good chunk of the psychology degree is actually statistical analysis, and for that they're going to need a good, strong GCSE math grade. So that little bit of information can help start to colour some of their thinking and just ensure that they are on the right path from that earlier age. As we move up towards sort of AS and A-level selection, you will have a group of students who are very happy, they know where they're going, and you will have another group who are still uncertain. And it's important that you have the correct guidance for those who are on the narrower pathways, who have the real subject-specific requirements, and also an understanding of, for those who don't have that very narrow choice, that specific destination in mind, that they're able to study quite often the traditional subjects, those that are valued widely in the admissions, sort of university admissions world, so they keep as many options open to them as possible.
I think this is such a good point. It really breaks my heart when families come into me and say, so, he's going to study economics at LSE. And I'm like, fantastic. What A-levels or IB is he doing? Well, he's doing, psychology, art and business. I'm like, that's sort of not going to cut it. So again, Alex, at Wellington, how early do you start this process with your students?
To be honest, we start as early as year 1. So we have careers days, in foundation stage even we have the, what would you like to be when you grow up, and starting that discussion really, really early in lots of ways. However, you're also preparing students for the unknown. The unknown is that their decisions about what they want to study, where they want to study may well change. We have students who apply to multiple countries, as I'm sure Nick and Alex do as well. So it's about that breadth of curriculum and widening the experience of opportunity for our students that we believe gives them, if not the answers, a good inkling as to what they're likely to want to do later on. And so we would always preach breadth of curriculum. We're all from National Curriculum for England and GCSE and IGCSE schools, so we believe that that breadth also has a lot of currency for our students when it comes to that kind of, well, what do you want to do? And in fact, if you go to a US university, year 1 may well be general education, in which case students don't need to decide so early. We have lots of joint honours degrees. There's the ability to change the direction of your career through a master's, and therefore exposure to a wide range of options and inspiring students through the curriculum, we believe is the way to give them as many answers as they can possibly get without perhaps giving that final golden, this is what you're going to do and this is where you're going to do it.
I think that's interesting, and obviously that kind of breadth, and then obviously with you guys it's all kind of coming to that specialisation. But there's just so much choice out there at HE level, and it can be quite overwhelming. Nick, how do you kind of deal with that at Sunmark? Because these kids can go, it's one of the things I love about here, that kids take a very 360 approach to this. And we sort of tell them they can do anything, but actually the reality is they have to start zoning in and sort of, targeting some things.
Sure, I hope you don't mind me being a little bit provocative.
Love that.
I think that the children generally are very open-minded and actually fairly at ease with that as a process. So taking into consideration what my esteemed colleagues say here, we start early at Sunmark, try and nurture that open-mindedness, and we, like other colleagues, will use tools to help broaden that. So we use Unifrog as an example, and we can have students much younger than the sort of post-16 engaging with Unifrog, getting a sort of insight into the world of careers as well as the world of university. So I think dipping the toe in the ocean there is really important from an early age. I say they're not overwhelmed or they're not fazed by it. I think the provocative part is that actually it's parents often, and this is for an audience of parents, that parents bring Parents bring that experience of being at university, but they also bring that anxiety about their children going to university. So I think that's part of the process that we go through, is trying to nurture the parents through and to breed that open-mindedness from an early stage in their time with the school. I think when you have the parents on side and when you have them thinking about what that journey might look like, and the fact that it's not a linear journey, we offer lots of different pathways for students, and the reality is they might start on one and merge onto another one and perhaps come off and start something entirely different. So it's important for the parents to realise that it isn't that linear journey, that it can be quite different. I
think that's really interesting. Actually, that provokes another kind of question. How do you educate your parents? Because I think, parents do have a very influential role on their kind of children's decision-making process. But actually, some of their information may be quite out of date, both in terms of career opportunities and the sorts of degrees that are available. So how do you go about educating the parents?
Yeah, I think we start by collaborating with them, because it's a co-constructed journey, isn't it? Like you say, even if we refer back to our own educational journeys, perhaps they took a specific path in a specific geolocation that a lot of our students do not. So the process is that of a co-construction, helping them understand the possibilities, getting lots and lots of universities into the school to discuss that with our students and parents from a very very young age. We've had nearly 200 universities into our school this half term. So we don't want to think that we overload them, but we certainly provide them with a range of opportunities that they have to discuss the possibilities available for their children. And of course, even those possibilities can change from year to year, as perhaps they speak to a Dutch university and they realise the quality of education available in the Netherlands, or an Australian university that has an equal provision. So co-collaboration is how we approach that.
Alex, what about you at Arcadia? Because again, it's a journey you have to take the parents on alongside the pupils.
Yeah, there is a bit of work that we have to do around narratives and stories. I think there are a certain number of unique cultural challenges in the region, which sometimes narrow the streams of what are believed to be acceptable careers or expected careers. And sometimes, I see my role as to be part of someone who helps navigate these changes in the parents' minds as much as the students. Quite often, I will begin a conversation with a student as my first port of call with parents outside the room, because then I get the student-led narrative. I get what I really want, and then, what I really want from the student's perspective, and every now and then if I bring a parent in, I find that story shifts a little bit, the sands underfoot change, and then we're framing the conversation a little bit differently. It is part of educating the parents about the different options when their expectations are unlikely to be met. But I won't say hand-holding, but a reassurance that, there are all these fantastic opportunities out there. There are all these different pathways, international education systems, families who are used to the UK system where you drop into a 3-year program and you drop into year 1 geography and that's what you're studying. There are different options around the world, and sometimes that conversation is easier here than it is at home, back in England, because the majority of families here have already made the international leap once. They are themselves now third culture parents. They expect their students to travel around the world, access all these different things. But yeah, I think a little bit of, private counselling with the student, a little bit of narrative building with the family, reassurance if things aren't going perhaps the way that mum and dad had dreamed. There is a responsibility, as you said. It's a little bit provocative, a bit of taboo perhaps, to turn around to a parent and say, you're wrong. But we do that sometimes. That's part of the role.
Well, I think, as you say, you have to kind of make sure that the student is kind of suited to the program. They're going to be doing it for 3 or 4 years. It's got to kind of work for them there, hasn't it? I think one of the other things, the parents here are quite rightly very ambitious for their children, and they have very kind of high expectations. But I think we would all agree that in many cases, particularly for those very high tariff universities, whether it's America or the UK or indeed Europe, that actually nowadays the qualifications aren't necessarily enough. Everybody's getting their A's or their B's, or everyone's getting good academic results. What else do you encourage the students to do to sort of build their profile, in a sense, to make them stand out? Nick?
Yeah, I think it depends also on the type of programs you have post-16, and in fact throughout the school. We're fortunate to offer the IBDP. We've got the careers-related program, A-levels as well, and BTEC. But regardless of the program, it's about thinking about what the co-curriculars are, the extracurriculars, and what you can do for yourself. So if it's within the parameters of the IBDP, they're going to be looking at their service learning, for example, and we'll really push the importance of that. But actually, it's also about thinking what students can do outside of the actual school itself. What can they do for themselves, and to show that self-starting. So there's also a culture of self-starters and making sure they're looking for those opportunities. They're not being handed the opportunities. And they could be vast and diverse. Going and finding an old people's home, for example, and working in the summer to try and develop your empathy, for example, for no pay and perhaps for no congratulations, is the breeding ground for a good medic, for example, or someone working in that side of things. So we want people to develop those skills through experience. So a kind of self-led experiential learning is critical, but of course as schools we can offer those opportunities as well. So that will be within the curriculum or within the sort of broader ECA or co-curricular program.
Alice, what about you at Wellington? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so I suppose we have a hashtag that we put out, and it's Be Amazing, and it's something that we want and expect our students to look for is opportunities that will have a genuine change, make a genuine change either for them as individuals or in the wider community. We only offer IB programs, the IBDP, CP, and courses, but it's something that ultimately what we're looking for is the students to have a genuine, meaningful impact, and that can take its place in lots of different ways. But we say where students are having an impact on themselves or the wider community, and I think I don't want to set a standard that it's just me who judges it necessarily, but where we're asking students to do something that makes people go, wow, and our students are so creative that is not a difficult thing for them to do, but that taking action upon that idea is also something that we encourage students to do. And we have a structure in place to enable them to do that. But yeah, that wow moment is what we're looking for from students.
That kind of spike on that kind of profile. But I mean, it's interesting, I think, Alex, because I think you've come from an admissions background at a university. So what, can I flip it and say, you know, what is a university looking for in terms of outside of just the academics?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a little bit different around the world. From the UK perspective, the academics will always be number one. But it is really important that students have all these opportunities because it allows them to frame the academic skills that universities are expecting in sort of non-academic contexts. So this might be in sort of work experience environments where they take applied elements of mathematics and apply it to an architectural work experience placement. Some of it might be reading from a certain piece of a history, a textbook or a history source, which then they take some form of action on. I was working with a student recently who was speaking about reading of artifacts that had been removed from Africa and placed in the National Gallery, in national museums, and they went to visit them, and they suddenly found themselves in awe of these items, and sort of in this strange place of dissonance, because they had this idea that the removal of the artifact from its place of origin was wrong, but they found themselves awestruck when they saw it in a museum. And it's about giving students these opportunities, through either work experiences, through visits internationally, through sort of Duke of Edinburgh programs, extended project qualifications and things such as that, to have these moments where they are able to demonstrate a reflective skill, grappling with a complicated idea. And those are some of the qualities that in a seminar academic staff are looking for. Selectors are looking for critical thought, ideas taken from an academic side and put into real-world action and reviews based on that.
Oh, yes, and that does demonstrate that kind of level of kind of intellectual maturity, doesn't it, to be able to do that, and to get that into the 4,000 characters of a British personal statement. Always a bit of a kind of challenge there, I think. I think just kind of taking a step back, I'm also intrigued as to, from your kind of range of experiences, what are the factors that are driving and motivating students to study internationally? I mean, increasingly we have good universities here. We obviously have pupils from a very wide range of nationalities. Alex, what do you think are the key drivers that sort of, encouraging these students to study in different locations?
Yeah, I think experiences. We think that either their own personal or the experiences that our alumni can provide. We do have contact and context from our alumni network that we keep in touch with at the school, but also through the wider GEMS education group. We're privileged that I had an opportunity. For example, a student was applying to a particular university in Hong Kong, and it just so happened that I knew a student who had been to that university, was able to connect them, and that alumni network often will provide answers that students will be seeking in terms of what the courses are like, what the method of study, where the lecturers have worked, and their context in terms of research. So I think genuinely the experiences that the students have had, but also preparing students to be that little bit more fearless and to approach something that they may have absolute conviction on, that they're still unsure as to what the impacts are going to be of that, that leap to living solo in Milan, or living in Alberta in Canada, for example. What's that going to be like? I think ultimately nobody knows until they're in that situation, but to provide them with experiences, opportunities, but also that conviction that actually everything's going to be okay, and I know that I've got the skills to be able to do that.
So actually that's a good point to kind of pick up on, Nick. I mean, it's all well and good, you're applying for your university course, you get offered your place, but the actual transition from school into university is quite a tricky one to navigate, I think. And I think sometimes there's a naivety around that. We all think, well, they're all in English language curriculum schools, they're all going to be fine. How does Sunmark go about kind of equipping them with those, not just the academic skills, but the kind of the other skills to successfully navigate that journey?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I want to pick up on Alex's point about alumni. I think that's absolutely absolutely vital. And I did pick up on this in one of the earlier talks about inviting the alumni to come back and having very open and frank conversations about what university life is all about, because it's taking what's in the brochure actually into reality. And I think having those honest, those earnest, open conversations can make all the difference. And actually, in some cases, it can change people's direction. I talked about things not being linear earlier. I think people could be having their hearts set on one particular style of university in one particular destination, and quite quickly understand that living in London, for example, is not actually what it's all made out to be. And the reality of living on your own or living in shared accommodation is actually maybe what they want, or maybe totally what they don't want. So having those real life stories is absolutely vital. And I absolutely encourage, and our counselling team encourage, as much alumni interaction as possible. That alongside having professors coming in, not just to sell their wares and tell us what's wonderful about their universities, but actually to give presentations as well, to give seminar style or lecture style encounters, episodes where the students get a better insight into what it's actually going to be. So there's both the social side, there's also the academic side, and both of those can be real eye-openers. So we encourage it at Sunmark, and I'm sure colleagues do as well in their schools.
The number of students I have who come back to me and say, Fiona, it's so different from what I expected. They don't teach us anything. I'm like, well, the clue is in the word lecturer, But I think there is that understanding. It's such a different style of delivery. And also that the children, I mean, they're all so busy and productive in your schools and scheduled, and they get to university and they have a lot of free time on their hands. And I think they don't always appreciate that hour of lecture means you should be doing 4 hours of your own research. So again, Alex, how can we help the children to sort of, make this leap? What can we do at schools to make that transition easier?
Yeah, I think there is a requirement to focus on skills and self-management skills. I think this is a real, opportunity for schools to consider other parts, of the less traditional curriculum side, about building hobbies and individual interests. We also have a sort of, we call it ALLS, or Arcadia Lifelong Learning, which is all about, these applied skills in life, be them the application of sort of formalized business skills. We run lemonade sales, things like that. But it's these early introduction of these self-management skills, building good habits in students, helping them understand how to structure their time. And it's something that I think can really come in the sixth form, where you have a greater number of sort of free study periods and an understanding that there is a designated space for individual work, a designated space for group work, and a designated time for classroom study, and begin helping students move that time around, finding what works for them, and also making sure that they are working in a way in which they some students will thrive on the pressure of further education. They will love it. They will be unable to get enough of it. They'll really be into it. Other students will find that when some of that structure goes away, they have a great sense of guilt, of sort of an inability to place their energies correctly. And building good study habits and these timetable habits can help students then, when they do make the leap to university, they understand, they will have in their course handbook, the lecturer will tell them, their seminar leader will tell them, 1 hour here, 4 hours independent. If we start fostering that skill, that academic skill in sixth form, where it's a few hours and there are some more designated spaces for that really helps the transition. Food technology and things such as that, a very powerful question here is, can you make 5 meals?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of my key things. When the students have been offered their places and they've been confirmed, I actually run webinars and seminars, for parents as to what they need to do to help prepare their children. Please help them, make a shopping list, tell them what they need to buy as their stock basics, and also please teach them how to use a washing machine.
Sorry, yeah, and it's interesting you should say that. Actually, we have a Year 13 Leavers program that we call the Grad Prix, where we do teach them to use washing machines.
Brilliant.
We teach them to cook. We teach them to iron. All these essential skills that they're going to need for life on their own, ultimately.
Yes, and I think that is so valuable. And I think there's always a bit of a debate, should that be a parental kind of lesson or a school? But I don't think we can necessarily leave it to that now.
Yeah, I mean, I think all schools have their different sort of approaches to giving students those insights. I think, to go back to some earlier points, if we've got a great post-16 program, it is about the inquisitiveness, it's about the self-management, and it's that willingness to get outside your comfort zone. So while, you know, we might try and teach them how to boil an egg and cook a pizza, etc., what we also want to do is say it's okay to be outside your comfort zone. And actually sitting on this stage reminded me of something that's upcoming at our school, which is a big event called Think and Thrive, where actually we have the students doing the interviewing of the great and good of Dubai and beyond. And actually, it's a nerve-wracking thing to do for anyone to get up on a stage, and giving students those opportunities to get outside their comfort zone, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's out there on the football field or on a stage, I think is absolutely paramount. So for me, there are so many different things we could try and prepare them for. We just can't do it as educators. What we have to do is develop a spirit in which they're willing. So the first time they're in a share house and need to cook the meal for the group, they don't get straight on the phone to mum, that they actually get the recipe book, or they speak to a friend and they cobble something together, because that's in their DNA to try something new. And I think great schools, and so many great schools represented today, are the ones that prepare the students with the mindset for the next steps, whether it's academic or whether it's there in the kitchen.
Yes, so they have that kind of flexible, adaptable mindset, and the resilience, I think, as well, to kind of keep going when kind of things get tough. So I think, just to kind of wrap up, really, just sort of in terms of kind of practical advice, because we have such this amazing array of experience here, I think, for parents, how can we collaboratively, as parents and as education professionals, help children to make confident choices? What are the kind of pieces of advice that we can give them in terms of, you know, how do you make a confident choice about this next step?
I would recommend that students and parents ask too many questions, because there is never a silly question. There's just an unanswered one as far as it comes to university choice. And even still, when at university, you may still have unanswered questions, and that's okay. And I think what Nick said about that, you know, that preparation for the unknown is really important. And equally, if students decide that after year one at one university they're not happy, to have that conviction to go, actually, I'm going to transfer to this, or I'm going to change my course, and you know, all of that is possible within the realms of it, as long as you're asking the right questions. So if unsure, even if not unsure, preempt where possible for the unknown, and ask so many questions that you have as many answers as you can possibly use to make as good a decision as you possibly can.
Yes, I think that's great advice, and my kind of reverse that is research, which I guess is the other kind of side of that, isn't it? Alex, what would you say if you had a parent and child sitting in front of you, like, top tip for making a confident choice?
Yeah, I think for parents, listen to your son, listen to your daughter, listen to your child. Pay attention to them for a long period of time. Listen to them for a long time. See, as I said, we will all have worked with students who they know what they want to do. There are other students for whom it's a big decision and a big choice, and it's less clear. So for parents, listen over long periods of time, mark down, you know, the key turning points. What did they really enjoy? A lot of the students that I work with, I encourage them, you know, we use Unifrog as well, and they document their experiences all the way up. I encourage them to keep sort of personal diaries of one form or another, be it, you know, individual written diaries, be it some other sort of creative outlet, but something that they can sort of string together ideas from when they review them sort of every 3 months or every year. I was speaking to a head of sixth from another school recently, and they were talking about how little time students now spend in the space between unknown, being lectured at or talked at, and knowing. The sort of liminal space in which we absorb information, we process it. You know, for many of us, we go to sleep with an idea in our head, and we wake up in the morning and we know what to do. We're so occupied currently, you know, be it with, you know, all the events at school that we do, be it with TikTok, be it with Instagram, that there is a much smaller amount of time where we're doing nothing. And students need some self-reflective time that really is self-reflective, and sometimes a little personal journal, and even if it's went to geography today, hated it. You know, if you write that 6 times across 3 months, geography perhaps isn't for you. If you start finding that you were able to apply a skill that you picked up in your English lesson to a historical text and you really enjoyed that cross-pollination, hey, that's an idea that maybe you didn't recognize at the time, but upon review you can see that, and particularly if that's then brought into the real world. So really, for parents, listen to your son, listen to your daughter. For students, listen to yourselves. And also, don't be too harsh if things don't work out the way that you think. Do any of you know what the sector's going to look like in 5 years? No, it's unreasonable to expect students to know what the higher education sector will look like, what their career sector will look like in 3 to 5 years. So be open and don't be too upset when things don't work out exactly how you had planned.
I think that's such good advice, because I think also people sort of think that they make this life-changing decision and it's set in stone, and actually it isn't. There's plenty of I think you said, you know, if it's not working, you can change course, and I think that's a really good message for students. Nick, I'm going to give the last word to you.
Well, there's been so much sage advice and guidance on this panel already. I'm just going to pick up on a couple of things. You mentioned research, and that can sound a bit glib occasionally. I say that, research. But what lies beneath it is actually a spirit of openness and willingness to look at the flip side of things. So we could all name the Russell Group top 5, we could all name the Ivy Leagues, etc., and the equivalents around the world. I've always said, and the counsellors at Sunwork certainly do, let's get below the surface. Let's really look at the courses, let's look at the cultures of the campuses, let's really understand that. Let's look at the flip side. Let's think about reasons not to go to those places as well. Let's not think too much about the destination and the name. Let's think about what the course actually involves. And I'm pretty sure, and I don't mean this unfairly, but if someone said to me now, I went to Edinburgh University, what are the entry requirements for modern history at Edinburgh today? I might struggle, because things have changed since the parent, and in this case, I took that course, and actually the course structures will have changed, the types of assessment, the type of teaching, etc. So I think that spirit of openness, that willingness, co-construction, so important to do this together across the dinner table, but also just to have and nurture that developing, inquiring mind and be open to new experiences. And I think when the parents and children do that, or young people do that together, and that might be from an earlier age, then actually you end up with the right destination, but you keep the open mind that that destination might change to a different destination. And I do think there is that belief that we lose sometimes about lifelong learning. Bachelor degrees is not the end.
That's so
I'll
true.
pause there.
It's not a destination, and it's all right. It's still part of that education journey, isn't it? Well, thank you all so much. That's been absolutely fantastic. I think it's given us an insight into the kind of practicalities of it, the kind of the bigger picture of it, and it's been great to draw on all of your experience. So thank you very much, Alex, Nick, and Alex.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Really nice to meet you too.
Yeah, and you.
It's really nice to meet you.
We've got a picture. I'm not doing. It's too late for the pictures now.